This is episode 13 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. I'd like to welcome Graham Gullans today. Graham is a COO and co-founder of LiftMetrix, a leading social media analytics company built for brands to view their social data entirely through a business lens. LiftMetrix partners with Hootsuite to bring ROI measurement and actionable recommendations to social media managers. Graham is an active angel investor with over a dozen investments and is active on the board of Zoomcar, an Indian-based car rental company that has raised $22 million to date. Graham began his career as an equity derivatives trader and has taken his quantitative trading background to social media analytics. Welcome, Graham. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. So I can't start without asking you about this $22 million to date with Zoomcar. That's incredible. Is that your first entrepreneurial experience?
Yeah, it was my first venture after leaving a corporate job. I had some friends from New York get up, pack their bags, and move to India and start a car rental business, which was very exciting at the time, and it was new for India. And so they've enjoyed a lot of success being the first sort of entrance of car rental companies to the market.
That's hilarious. So they just packed up. They're like, we're going to India. Like, what?
Yeah, well, they were college roommates who dropped out of business school when they saw the opportunity to bring sharing economy type business to India. They had a particular affinity to India and had written a business plan, so they had some background. But a lot of what they sort of wrote about is coming true on the need for car rental in India and how that market's developed.
Wow, that's awesome. And then because you were friends with them, you got in on getting involved in being an investor. Is that right?
Yeah, I originally started, my skill set is on raising capital and helping entrepreneurs early on. That's sort of where I started. And so for them, I was able to, work from the US while they were operating on the ground in India, raise initial capital for them as they started taking off, professionalize the board with governance type things. And so that's been my involvement to date. And it's really helped me with LiftMetrix as well, because now I'm learning a lot of the operational side of things at this company.
Right. So you've invested in Zoomcar, and then how long after that was it that you started LiftMetrix?
It was about a year after. LiftMetrix was started in the beginning of 2014. So I had about a year gap where I was angel investing and helping startups on the side.
Okay. And then what was the background, or how did this idea for LiftMetrix come along?
Sure. So I ended up meeting my co-founder, Nick Pye, through mutual friend and a lawyer. He thought we'd get along, and he thought we had similar backgrounds and skill sets to complement one another. But the idea from LiftMetrix really came from Nick's background in social media analytics, matching my background in sort of algorithm development and things like that. Nick had spent time working with portfolio companies where he was an entrepreneur in residence at a venture fund in New York, building out some social media analytics tools for the companies. So he specifically got into social apps and social games. So from 2008, 2012, companies were putting out apps that lived on Facebook, quizzes, polls, contests, and that's really where he started and got the background in social media.
So full disclosure to anyone listening, so our company actually uses LiftMetrix and loves it. And I feel like this is such a big game changer on the social analytics side, because so much of what we do, we get asked, well, what's the ROI of social media? And I think it's incredible that LiftMetrix has figured out a way to track that and analyze it for us. So when you started LiftMetrix, was that the idea from the beginning, or was the idea create an analytics platform? Like, how did you guys get to that point of having ROI as a differentiator?
Yeah, well, it's no hidden truth that all ideas evolve quickly over time. So when I joined Nick to start LiftMetrix, he had a background in social media analytics, but he didn't see strong growth in the apps business as their fan pages were changing. Yeah. But he really kept getting the same question from brands and advertisers. What's what do I get for all these likes, shares, and comments? After someone completes a quiz, are they going to redeem this coupon on my site or in my retail store? Mm-hmm. So he kept hearing, not so specific as what's my ROI, but brands kept asking, well, what am I getting for all this? And so that's really where the idea evolved from, and that's where we sort of started the company from in 2014. But it's been, it seems like daily or weekly, brands have new challenges and requests for wanting to measure and equate ROI to dollars and cents on social. So the other thing that I'll say is that social is sort of the newest marketing channel. Everyone kind of knows that. And each marketing channel goes through waves as they mature. So display or TV and print had traditional measurement metrics. TV had Nielsen. Then as digital advertising came around with Google, people started getting into the cost per click and CPM model. As social came out, there were just so many more metrics, more than even digital had. It was hard to really understand what was working and what wasn't working. So as 2014, 2015 has rolled around, more and more brands are starting to actually look at the end conversion goal that they have. So their real business objective, may it be a purchase or a download or a customer sign up, and equate that and use that as dollars and cents ROI rather than a like, share, and comment, which is somewhat antiquated now. They want to really be able to measure their end business objectives, which is what we try to achieve with LiftMetrix.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because you were mentioning that one of the big things you bring to the table is you know how to do fundraising and make that effective. And so often when I'm talking to entrepreneurs and newbie entrepreneurs in particular, their concern about having a startup or a tech company isn't necessarily on the technical side of things. It's more on the ego side of things, that feeling of, am I good enough? Do I know how to do this? And I'm wondering, as you've moved from, and maybe part of your role still is fundraising, but you're also in operations. So as you make that move, did you feel any of that? And if so, how did you overcome it? Or was it kind of an easy transition for you?
Sure. So you're asking, in starting companies, how do you think, how do you get over the hump of, wanting to fundraise or the ego that comes along with maybe investing, things like that?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think anyone who's interested in starting a company has to be pretty passionate about their idea first and foremost. So you have to be confident yourself that you're going to be able to quit your job and go all in and work, twice as hard as ever before. So I think there's an embedded confidence in people starting companies. And then from there, you have to just apply that confidence to all the meetings you're having with potential investors. Of course, it's day one is the hardest to raise capital. Every subsequent day becomes a little bit easier. But given how much you're giving up of your life in terms of, career prospects, opportunity costs, and not having a full-time job, you have to walk into every pitch meeting and just exude confidence, right? You're giving up a whole piece of your life to do this, and that you want that passion to come through. And that's really how you fundraise for companies early on. People will see the passion, you're telling them the idea and the market, and that's ultimately what they're investing in, because they're investing in the individual and the team as opposed to the product and traction, which come later. So I think the evolution is basically you do have to stick with friends and family early on, in my opinion, to raise capital, because there's not really a market for raising capital for ideas until there's a product released publicly and there's some sort of traction. So I always think there's an inflection point once you have a product in the market where you're getting traction over 3 or 6 months, and traction can be measured from new users or revenue or some other metric. That's when you can tap outside investors, people outside your network. But until then, you have to stick within your network.
That's really good feedback on the traction piece of the 3 to 6 months and showing the number of users or the growth that's happened in that. That's really good. I'd love to know if you feel like, and maybe it's too soon for LiftMetrix. LiftMetrix is so new, but if you've made any rookie mistakes and how you've overcome that. So maybe not necessarily for LiftMetrix, but just in your career in general.
Yeah, I think we make mistakes and have modest successes every day. So there's high peaks and low valleys at running a startup. I think just quickly thinking that early on when you are building a company, you have to realize how long it's going to take I think you get so enthusiastic the first day, that week, month, that you know what the product's going to be, you know where you're going to take it, and you know what the users are, and all you need is capital, right? That's the only missing piece. Capital is the hardest to find at that point, so you have to be, cognizant of, budgeting and your resources, how you're building a product. But I really think when I first started the company, I thought I knew exactly what our platform would be. I knew how we would sell it to brands, and I knew how brands would use it. I think that evolves every day, and even the platform, we've just released, which we think is very robust and enterprise focused, it will continue to iterate. So as you sort of, put out your first product or MVP, that's going to change. As you pitch investors, that's changing at the same time, because your pitch and story becomes very different along the chain of the products. I think those go hand in hand. What you start out with is never what you end up with. And as you fundraise, you're going to keep changing your story. And so it's the product that's changing because you have a different product market fit than you may have anticipated. And your fundraising story is completely changing. For example, we started out thinking we were selling to small businesses, but we realized that the need for ROI measurement and optimization of content was, even greater at an enterprise level. And building an enterprise kind of sized technology is a very different, build than a small business software. And so the last thing I think we learned for that transition is that you also have different go-to-market approaches. We thought that advertising online would be huge for us to just drive page views and demos and conversions. But as we went more enterprise focused, we realized that we could do a direct sales team without having as much marketing, because you're really just doing reach outs to the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, or you can leverage a partner like we have with Hootsuite. So you learn every step along the way how your product evolves and how that evolves your fundraising pitch, and eventually how you build up your organization. We thought we would need, dozens of marketers and just pushing traffic to our site, but it's really we built more of a sales organization.
So I think that's so interesting to be thinking about, and for our listeners to be thinking about, is what is that piece that is going to grow this once you already have some traction, and that same process you went through where you thought it was more on the digital side, and then you realized it's a sales team talking to those decision makers. That internally, was that like a really big shift, or was it just a small thing that one day was kind of figured out?
I think it took a while to figure that out. I think, every entrepreneur is so enthusiastic of what they're doing. Everyone believes in their own product, but they're limited by resources. And so we're making decisions on each subsequent hire. And so we were always looking at, do we bring on a new engineer, a new salesperson, or a new marketer, was usually our three areas where we needed. If we had unlimited resources, we bring on a huge teams in all three areas. But we didn't have that luxury early on. So we ended up, going heavy on the engineering route, really just building up a great product, and then hopefully a great product through a partnership could sell more rapidly than having to build up an entire marketing organization that was selling or bringing in traffic that was for substandard products. I think we focused a lot on product first. Really dug into it and hired more engineers. Then sales came. Then I think marketing is going to come for us, much more this year. But I think those were the linear steps that we decided on.
What do you think? You mentioned that Hootsuite is a partner of yours, and what do you think for startups that are gaining some traction? Do you have any tips on getting some really great names on board to partner?
Yeah, so partner is a great way for startups early on to get traction. While being a small company, it's very hard to get your name out there. You usually start with, again, friends and family, asking them to introduce you to brands that you might sell into. So partners are a way to leverage your sales team, multiples of what you have. So I think partnership is a good way to go, but you have to be honest on each partnership up front. of what expectations may be, and how likelihood it is to drive ultimate traction for you. So I think every company needs to start speaking to multiple partners and start whittling it down as those conversations mature. So there was one company where we had a complementary technology to them, and they wanted to partner to us, but they are a much larger corporation, public company. They had a 3-month process for becoming a partner. You'd had to go through a security review, and for us to go all in on that one partnership without knowing what to necessarily get on the back end was a hard decision to make. With the example of Hootsuite, that's ultimately, the partnership we arrived at, and it's been one that we've been really happy with. I think that grew over time. They don't happen overnight. You sort of talk to the partner and see where your visions are as a company. Does your product complement theirs today? Will it complement them in the future? As you start getting some small wins and successes under the belt, that increases the value of the partnership to both. So no partnership overnight will, get you exactly to, the metrics your board wants to hit. It's going to take, 3, 6, 9 months before you're, fully ingrained. But partnerships, I think, are a great way to start off, as long as you're sort of truthful about what the expectations are and not building for one partner, really just, having a diverse set of partners that you can choose from, and then picking the one that's ultimately the best. And then sort of as you secure one partner early on, if that's the strategy for you, you still have to eventually build out the direct sales side of the business,
right?
Which is what we've done now, because, your board and your investors always want to see that you can sell through a partner who may have more contacts than you, but you can also sell direct to yourself. Can you build a sales organization? So we ended up hiring a sales development rep, someone who's directly responsible for bringing inbound leads. Sort of more of a marketing role, but they're trying to qualify leads, and it's more about the quality than the quantity. So I think you have to, as your business hits an inflection point, you have to prove out the partnership, but then prove out direct sales as well.
You have given such valuable linear insight on this whole process. I feel like someone just needs to turn that into a business plan. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, my final question for you is, I would love to know what's on your radar, and what do you think is that important new trend that we'll all be talking about a year from now?
Sure. In social media, or just in general technology?
In general, tech startups, entrepreneur world.
Yeah, let me give this a second of thought. I guess there's 2 quick answers. One, I think there's just a huge buzz around the self-drive and autonomous car, right? Lyft getting fundraising from GM, Uber saying their fleet's going to be self-drive. I think that's, super interesting trend to watch. I think that's supplanted Bitcoin in my head is something that's even more fascinating, a little bit more tangible. So that's something I'm looking at. It doesn't affect our business day to day, but it's super interesting and cool. I think
cool in your personal life. Right?
Yeah, it'd be really cool. I'd love to hop in one. Yeah, living in New York City, you don't need to own a car, so I'd love to.
Living where I live in the mountains, I would love to not have to drive wherever. It's a long commute.
Yeah. And then the other quick answer, I'd say what I'm seeing from startup land and fundraising land is that it's just, everyone knows this, that it's just so easy to start a business, but as we're sort of in this bull market for startups, you're seeing more and more people leave their job and just be super confident that, building an organization, a startup is easier than it looks, or, all the news you read on TechCrunch is just, everyone's able to get on the front page of TechCrunch and raise millions of dollars. It's just much harder than that. And what you'll see is fundraising becomes extremely tight for any company in the idea-based stage, because a lot of where you're going for fundraising at the idea-based stage is just from angel investors in your network. It's friends, family, and old colleagues. Those investors have already been tapped by other people in their network. So I think there's some fatigue by angels of investing in ideas, which makes it, a difficult catch-22 for an entrepreneur just starting out, because they really have to fundraise from friends and family. That's really the only network that'll give them money who's, supporting the entrepreneur more than the product and the traction. But they have to be cognizant that that's not going to come as easily as it has in the past. People are a little bit fatigued of investing in idea-based businesses. So you have to be a little bit more organic with how you source capital, or be a little bit more scrappy with building your products and your team. So I think that's going to be tough. Once you get traction, I think there's still fundraising there. It's just that catch-22 is, how do I get the money in to build my product versus how do I build my product to get money?
So I know I said that was the last question, but one more question on that piece. When you are asking friends and family, do you have like a minimum threshold of what you think a friend or family member should invest? Or is it take what you can get? Or do you think they need to invest 10,000 or more to make it worth it? Like, how do you kind of navigate that world?
Yeah, I think speaking, more about tech products, I think it costs somewhere between 100,000 and 250,000 to at least get a product off the ground. So I think that's the initial funding I would set out to raise. It's not going to go very far, probably just get you to an MVP, but at least you have something to show your next set of investors.
Right.
So I think you need to raise a minimum of $10,000 checks. Probably the average angel check we see or we write is $25,000 from any individual. Once you get into a higher net worth, they're a little bit more $75,000 to $150,000 checks. But I think I always answer the question, personally, and then when pitching friends and family, is that you should only invest what you're comfortable losing. And so if I had kids and they were passionate about an idea, but I had no sense if it was a good idea, I'd still want to support them. I'd be happy investing whatever amount that helps them get their business off the ground, but something that I wouldn't worry about losing. So you have to size it proportionally, and usually that's 10,000 to 25,000 on the low end for someone looking to even make an investment.
Right, that makes sense. All right, well, that was awesome, Graham. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.